Hello, everyone. Welcome. Come on in. My name is Nikayla Matthews-Okome. I am the host of the Side Hustle Pro podcast. And tonight, I am going to be sharing with you how to go from hobby to hustle, making money with your podcast. Tonight is actually a milestone for me. It's the last time I'm teaching this masterclass for the year. And I'm just so happy that you guys decided to spend this Thursday with me and celebrate this milestone. So come on in. We have a lot to cover. Again, my name is Nikayla. I'm the host of the Side Hustle Pro podcast. And I've been podcasting now for 7 years and full-time for 6 years. So I'm going to show you how you can do it too. Hey, come on in, everybody. Shout out to the replay viewers. So let me just go ahead and kickstart everything. So my goal for tonight is really to teach you my tips for making money with your podcast. I know a lot of you guys start out and you're not sure where to begin. And then once you begin, you're not sure, okay, where do I go from here? So we're going to go over 3 main things. Number 1, the 3 things you should stop doing with your podcast and what to do instead. Number 2, we're going to go over an easy way to start just getting listeners so that they can stay connected and your show grows faster. And then finally, we'll be getting into actual strategies, and there's lots of ways to make money in podcasting, but tonight I'm really going to focus on my favorite strategies to make money from your podcast that you can start using right away. After you leave tonight, you can start implementing any of these. And then, of course, I'll also share with you how you can get additional coaching from me inside of the Podcast Moguls program. It's a program where I teach aspiring podcasters how to scale their podcast from hobby to hustle. So completely optional, but I will share a little bit more about that with you guys. All right. So, make sure you stick around till the end though, because we will have live Q&A. And that's one of the best parts about the live classes that I teach. Again, tonight is a milestone. It's the last live class for the rest of the year. So this is the last opportunity to have this Q&A time with me, unless of course you're inside of Podcast Moguls. So be sure to stay until the end for that. I will be answering every single question. And I'll also give you guys a free code for my podcast host, Libsyn. So Libsyn will allow you with this code to host your show for the first month and a half free. So that's my special gift for you for sticking around tonight. So be sure to stick around for both of those 2 things. All right. Okay, now I want to know a little bit about who's in the building. Let me know, give me a 1, 2, or 3 to let me know, what brought you here? How are you feeling in this moment? So for example, which one are you? Are you number 1? You've been thinking about starting a podcast for a while, but you're a little bit overwhelmed about how to start. Or are you number 2? You and your friends have a podcast idea and you want to make sure you do it right. And then finally, are you number 3? Where you've already started your podcast or you're getting ready to start and want to just make sure you're being strategic. So drop a 1, 2, or 3. Let me know who's here. Okay, I'm seeing a bunch of 3s and 2s, 1 and maybe 2. So a couple of 1s. Oh, cat peoples. Hey, girl. Hey. All right, so you're all in the right place. All right, you're all in the right place. This is a very good starting point, no matter which one of these buckets you fall into, because a lot of podcasters skip these steps. And then that's when you find yourself kind of frustrated, like, wait, what are we doing? Where's this going? What's the strategy here? So we're going to get into all of that, okay? Let me do a quick rewind, all right? It's not going to take a lot of time, but it's important for me to really share my journey with you guys so you understand that I didn't come from no audio or podcast or content creator background, but this is how I landed in this current role that I'm in, a full-time podcaster, making money from my show. My podcast is my main income. And this is what really brought me here. So first of all, I launched Side Hustle Pro in 2016, 7 years ago. Since then, it's gone on to amass over 9.6 million downloads. We're closing in on that 10 million mark in a few months. And I earn multiple 6 figures in sponsorship each year from the show. At the time that I launched this, It was my side hustle. So I was working full time at NPR, National Public Radio, at the HQ in DC. And there I led the digital marketing for top podcasts like How I Built This, Code Switch, and more. And again, my background, I have over 15 years of experience as a marketer. I was not a podcaster. I was not a broadcaster or anything like that. So it was really just serendipitous that I landed at NPR out of all places. And then as I grew my show in 2017, I was able to quit my job at NPR full-time to podcast full-time. So you can go back to December 2017 in the Side Hustle Pro podcast list and listen to this episode where I shared what went into this decision, how I was able to quit my job to do a podcast, plus my plan moving forward. In 2022, Side Hustle Pro was inducted into the Podcast Hall of Fame. I flew out to LA to accept my award. This was a crazy moment for me. Again, so surreal because I remember when I started my show in my living room. Fun fact, I was also born in Jamaica, grew up in the Boogie Down Bronx. I share this because I think it has really inspired my hustle. I have that immigrant mentality. I have that, coming from a place that I'm underestimated a lot mentality where I'm just going to figure things out. And, let me know if you can relate to that or if anybody's from Jamaica or the Boogie Down in the comments. But this is me in the middle. I'm the youngest. I don't know why this stuff is on the picture. I'll never know. It's a mystery. But that is tells you a lot about me. And podcasting is what has given me the most freedom and flexibility in my life. I'm here in my bedroom talking to you guys. Okay. Like, this is crazy that I'm able to make a living doing this, because when I had a job, I had very few vacation days. But podcasting, like I told you, allowed me to quit my job. And here I am in this picture on the honeymoon of my dreams. So when I had a job, I had limited honeymoon and limited vacation time period. We actually waited a whole year after we got married to take this vacation because I was working for the man and didn't have no vacation days. But delayed gratification is still sweet, y'all. So now I'm able to work from anywhere. My husband Moyo and I were both certified side hustlers, juggling parenting, careers, and our many entrepreneurial passions. So flexibility continues to be huge for us, especially as I get ready to have baby number 2. This is our first baby, Kingston, here. When I had a job, again, little to no family leave, but podcasting allowed me to stay home with my son for 24 months while getting paid to podcast. So even though it felt like I was a stay-at-home mom sometimes because we were in the pandemic, stuck home every day, couldn't get him into a daycare, I was getting paid because I had a podcast and I have income from sponsors and brand partnerships and all sorts of things that allow me to do this really non-traditional career. So today, podcasting continues to allow me to work from anywhere while getting paid to podcast. And on the road to podcasting, although it seems like I've done a lot of things right, which I have, but I've also done a whole lot of things wrong. This was me in May 2015. I look pretty happy, right? I'm cheesing. I'm in my graduation cap and gown. At the time, I was graduating from the University of Michigan Ross School of Business with my MBA, and I was looking like I'm about to conquer the world, right? But inside, what you can't see is that I'm actually freaking out, because at this point, I was rejected from the internship I had over the summer between first and second year. It was an internship at Google. I didn't get a full-time offer. So I was graduating with no job, no money, and moving back to DC to live with my boyfriend with no income. Like, I got a degree and no money, but I didn't stay down on myself for long. All right. When you're in between paths and you're trying to figure out what you want to do next, just start exploring and doing something. And for me, that thing was blogging. I had done it before, kind of let it phase out. And I said, all right, let me start, because I knew I wanted to build my personal brand. How many of you guys are here and you want to figure out this thing about personal branding? I know I wasn't sure what that entailed. Put in the chat the word brand if some of you guys have come here and are hoping that podcasting will help you figure this out. Yeah, podcasting is really, really good for this. So we'll get more into that in Q&A. So at the time, this was back in 2015, that's when I first even thought about this idea of building my personal brand. And I didn't know what that entailed. So I did what a lot of you guys are doing tonight. I started following different online branding coaches who were further ahead of me and learning from them about how to make your blog posts go further and build out your social media for your blog and stuff like that. So I was inspired to relaunch my blog. It was super tacky. These graphics are made by me in Canva. By the way, Canva has gotten a whole lot better than it was in 2015. So I had content, but I didn't have a purpose yet. And it's okay if you guys are here and you feel like you're just doing things, going through the motions, don't know where it's leading, still keep doing that stuff. I promise you it's leading somewhere. So the important thing was that I got started. The important thing is that you are here. Okay, this is leading you somewhere. Some of you might not start a podcast after this, but this very session is leading you somewhere else. One thing I learned was that you have to be willing to take the first step, even when you don't know where it will lead. 6, 7 years ago, I had no idea this would be my career path. I was very traditional: go to school, get a degree, try to get a job, work for a company, climb the corporate ladder. Never in a million years saw this for me. So sometimes you just have to take that first step, keep on taking the next step, because you don't even know where it will lead. So for me, that next step was continuing to blog. And for me, I then started to realize a common thread. First, my blog started super broad. And that's how some of your podcast ideas are going to start: super broad. You want to talk about everything. But after a while, if you really pay attention to what you're gravitating to and what your listeners are gravitating to, which you can see with your downloads, you'll start to see what you really excel at, what you should focus on, and what your sweet spot is. So for me, I realized I was loving hearing and sharing the stories of Black women side hustlers and entrepreneurs. I started with the homies. These are all my friends who I convinced to let me interview them. I just really wanted to understand how people were doing this whole thing while they were working a full-time job, were starting their entrepreneurial endeavors. So I just wanted to be a fly on the wall. And that's when the idea for Side Hustle Pro was born. I said, I'll ask the questions. Everybody else who's interested in this topic, I got it. I'm gonna bring on women who are entrepreneurs, who scaled from side hustlers, meaning that they worked a full-time job while they built up their business on the side. And we're gonna learn how we can do it as well, because not all of us can quit our job to start our own thing, right? So that's how the idea for my Side Hustle Pro podcast was born. You don't have to have the same path as me. Let me be clear about this. You do not have to just talk to one particular type of person. Like, your audience and who your target is going to depend on your show, your topic, so many different things. But I'm just sharing my journey so you can get a sense of how I landed there. I blogged for over a year before I realized that I wanted to start a podcast. A year before launching Side Hustle Pro, as a matter of fact, I didn't even know what a podcast was. That was around the time Serial came out. I was walking one day along with some of my friends. They started giggling about the Read podcast. I'm like, what's that? What's a podcast? Where do I listen to it? And then, so it's really ironic that a year later, I'm launching a podcast. And then in the first 7 days after launching, I landed in the top charts. This is Side Hustle Pro on the left, in the top 10 in marketing. And if you look really closely, you'll see that I'm 2 spots above Amy Porterfield, who I started out learning from. And then on the right, here's Side Hustle Pro debuting at number 37 in the business charts. And to this day, Side Hustle Pro, we stick it out. We're up there in top 100, top 150, top 200 in business. And there are hundreds and thousands of podcasts out there, you guys. So to remain, in there is really, really tough. And it just is a testament to consistency, hard work on this path. So for me, when I launched, I went hard on promotion. All right. Some of you might have seen my reel recently. Promotion can never die. Promotion can never stop. You have to go hard. So I printed up t-shirts, and every single conference I went to that summer of 2016, I was in there with this uniform, t-shirt, my black pants, and my pumps. And I realized, okay, I can really go somewhere. Like, I'm onto something. The response that I got coming out the gate, I realized that if I took this seriously, I could quit my job. So I started studying podcast monetization. And you guys, you are already way ahead of where I was, because I didn't even know really how you make money from podcasting when I started it. I just knew, hey, I have a blog. Podcasting seems to be big right now. I'm going to turn it into a podcast, and didn't know yet how to make money. Tonight, I'm going to share with you different ways you can make money. So going into it, you already know some things you can start targeting. So for me, I had to invest in courses to learn how to pitch sponsors. At that time, back in 2017, when I invested in this course, I invested in an $1,197 two-day event sponsorship intensive. It had nothing to do with podcasts, but it's the closest I could find, you guys. I'm like, all right, it says sponsors. It's in my area. It was in DC, actually Silver Spring, Maryland. So I was like, oh, cool, I'm going to do this. I was just eager to learn anything about sponsorship. And don't get me wrong, that was the most I had ever invested in my side hustle in life. But I just knew that I think I can be really good at this pitching stuff. I know my show has a good reception. People like this. So let me learn how to actually pitch sponsors. So lo and behold, 6 months after launching my podcast, I pitched my very first sponsor cold, meaning I didn't know anyone at the company, never pitched before, but I did that. And from that email and what transpired after, like they ended up adding other people into the email that were more over the sponsorship division. From that interaction, I earned my first $4,000 podcast sponsorship contract. So that is where it really began for me. I was like, boom, I can make money for this thing for real. Like $4,000. All right, let's do this. So around that time, Side Hustle Pro was also starting to get featured by Apple. This is Side Hustle Pro on the left, having a feature episode in the New and Noteworthy, my episode with Curlbox founder Myleik Teal, and then here on the right in the Bold Women category. By 2019, I was featured on the Today Show, in the Oprah magazine, on Forbes, and even held my first live show in DC with none other than Maya Elias, who was another one of the online branding coaches I started out learning from when I was unemployed and trying to find my way in 2015. So how did this all happen, y'all? How did I go from graduating with no job, no money, to the Podcast Hall of Fame? Well, let's get into it. Let's get ready to go over these tips to go from hobby to hustle with your podcast. And I'm going to read the 3 tips first, and then I'm going to get into them one by one. So, get ready to screenshot, take your notes, do whatever you need to, and please put your questions in Q&A. I see that some of you are already starting to do that, so I appreciate it. Yes, go over to Q&A when you have a question, and then when we do Q&A, I'm going to go through all of them. Cool? All right. So tip number 1 is we're going to go over the 3 things you should stop doing with your podcast and what to do instead. So I'll break down the quickest way to stand out in podcasting straight out the gate, how to stand out from the masses, and how to gain attention from day 1. Tip number 2 is I will go over an easy way to get listeners so that they stay connected and your show grows faster. So I'll teach you how to use Instagram to find your listeners and how to keep growing from there. And you can apply this tactic I will teach you on a number of social media platforms. So this is going to be really, really interesting and helpful for many of you. And then tip 3 is we'll get into my favorite strategies to make money from your podcast that you can start using right away. So I'll teach you how to set yourself up to get there. So again, whether you have started or not, now you're going to have this lens of here are some of the top ways to make money. Here are the most feasible ways to make money. So let me put myself in the position to do so. So let me break it all down. All right, so let's get into tip number 1. The 3 things you should stop doing with your podcast and what to do instead. So first and foremost, number 1, stop doing this. Stop keeping your podcast super broad so you don't put yourself in a box. There's so many people that come into the Podcast Moguls program. Let's say they have an interview show. One week they have an interview with a love expert. The next week they want to talk about fashion. The next week they want to talk about, and there's no overarching umbrella, which makes it really hard to get a loyal fan base because they don't know what your show is about. They don't know what it stands for. They don't know what message you're trying to get across. Stop making your podcast super broad so you don't put yourself in a box. There's actually no such thing as putting yourself in a box, by the way. You can reinvent yourself at any time. Number 2, stop doing this. Starting a general conversational podcast with the homies and making your podcast title vague or a play on words. Now, I know that you've seen people have much success with this. Different podcasts started at different times. So if you were starting a podcast back in 2013, and you wanted to make it something coy and do it with the homies, it was a much different landscape than it is today, when it is harder to be found in the podcast apps and across social media. So you really don't want to be playing around and making it hard for people to know what your show is about, because that's just going to make it 10 times harder for you to grow and climb this ladder in the podcast landscape. Number 3, please stop doing this. Launching in-person video podcast before you even master audio podcasting. Audio is still alive, you guys. Audio is supreme. Audio is what podcasting is all about. Podcasting is first and foremost an audio first platform. So if you only want to do audio, that is okay. You are not outdated. What I see happen with people who they get so hyped up based on what they see with TikTok and snippets on Instagram that they go right into video, is that they can't sustain it. Video is a very time-intensive commitment. And if you haven't carved out how you're going to fit this into your life, it's very easy to fall off. So even if you want to do video a couple of times because someone lives close to you, cool. But don't feel like you only have to do video. I see podcasters who book studio time, they film some episodes, it was amazing in person, but then they go back home, they want to talk to people who live in Colorado on different continents. And so they get in the studio, in the virtual studio, and they interview that way. And that is perfectly fine. So here's what happens when you think you have to do those other things, though. You make it hard for people to find your show when searching for topics that you discuss. You make it hard for people to know what your show is even about, and that is for them. And then you waste a lot of time on overhead costs before you start making any money from your show. And you don't want to do this. Podcasting is a very lean medium. You can start it very cheaply. So you do not need to come out the gate spending a whole bunch of money on your show until you are making money. So here's what you should do instead to go from hobby to hustle with your podcast. Number 1 is you're going to have to define your audience. Get really clear on who your show is for. And also define your niche. Get clear on what your show is about and your show's angle. And then 3, make it easy for people to find you. Use clear and targeted language for your show title, description, and episode titles. So it's not only about what your show is called, but it's also about how you describe that show in the blurb that you put inside of your podcast host that goes out on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Whenever someone pulls up your show, that description matters. And also your episode titles matter a lot as well. And all of these are also ways that people will find your show. It's SEO, search engine optimization. When these keywords about what your show is about are in your episode titles and your description, people will find your show more quickly. So I went through this myself, and this is why I share these kind of tips, because I know what it's like to want to do a play on words, a play on my name, to think I'm the most creative person ever. Look at the name I just came up with. This was what my blog was called, Kayla K Speaks. My name is Nikayla. It's a play on my name. First of all, no one could pronounce it. They were saying it wrong. They were saying Kayla Speaks, Kaylia Speaks. It was a mess, and it also didn't stand for nothing. What do you think when you see the words Kayla K Speaks? Probably nothing. You probably have more questions than answers, right? I don't want you to do that for your show, okay? The show is not about your name, because nobody knows from your name what your show is going to be about. And again, this was from one of my first blog posts. I was just grabbing onto anything marketing related to write about, because I thought I would get a job from that. What I realized is all of this was just not helping my SEO. It was not helping me to get traffic to my blog, because it stood for nothing. But then after a while, after I started gravitating to stories of side hustlers, I realized, hey, I want to talk to people who are side hustle pros. They just know how to do this side hustle thing. They were able to make it work for them. I want to learn from them. And since then, I make sure that all of my episodes tell that story, not only in the actual description of my show, but also the title of my episodes. This was a recent episode, and it says how CultureCon CEO Imani Ellis went from side hustling VP to full-time entrepreneur. So in that title, you see an arc. And if you're searching for side hustling, if you're searching for entrepreneur, if you're searching for her name, if you're searching for CultureCon, all of these things are going to make me get pinged and people will find my podcast. So these are some hacks and tricks to the game, because I know there are a lot of people who interview the same people as me. And when I search that person's name, my show is coming up because I make sure to optimize to be found in search. So not only have I gone through this whole rebrand and understanding how to make words work for me, my Podcast Mogul students have gone through it as well. So this is Erica M. McAfee. She's one of my OGs. She's been in the program since 2018. And when Erica joined, her podcast was called Erica M. McAfee Podcast. And as you can probably guess, that does not really signify what her show is about, right? She has a podcast about pregnancy and infancy loss, particularly for Black women. And she really wanted to help mothers get through this really tough and challenging time in their life. And so through going through the Podcast Moguls curriculum and lessons, she made the determination that she needed to rebrand. Rebrands are very common in Podcast Moguls world. Why? Because it's about your audience finding you. That trumps anything else. So she rebranded to the Sisters in Loss podcast. Still can keep your name on there, right? She also included subtle hints to the nature of the show. So there's some Ankara print behind the yellow in the logo, and it's just more vibrant, catch your eye. So colors are very important as well with your logo. But the sisters signifies to the audience, the loss signifies to the audience, and lo and behold, her show grew. This is another one of the Podcast Moguls. So before, my student Lori Tharps had a podcast called My American Melting Pot. And she includes on her logo something that a lot of people like to do, which is a picture of a microphone. Why? Stop putting the microphones on the logos, okay? We get it. It's a podcast. You don't need to do that. But also, as beautiful as this imagery is, it could mean anything. I see this and I don't know if it's, an image that's going to go along with some kind of census report. I don't know what this stands for, right? My American Melting Pot. I don't know if it's a documentary, anything. So what Lori learned through being in the program is she was so attached to this name because it was her blog that she turned into a podcast. And she was not able to fit into the course curriculum, what she was doing with this podcast, because she was prioritizing her attachment to the words and the logo and not prioritizing the needs of her audience as well as her strengths in what she can provide for other people. But once she made that switch, here's what she's doing now. Her podcast is now called Read, Write, and Create. This is an entirely new podcast, you guys. So sometimes you're not able to just rebrand. Sometimes you have to shift gears and pivot. So she pivoted to a new podcast called Read, Write, and Create. And it serves as a way for her to teach up and coming writers. She's a renowned author. She's helping other writers to understand the world of book publishing and writing and how to really monetize in this world. And so now her podcast, which we'll talk about more in monetizing land, her podcast is now attracting future clients. So it's very clear. You have the typewriter. Again, you can include your name, you can include your face if you want to, but make it very clear. So people who are looking to be authors, hey, you're probably going to search for write and create and all these other words. And then her description takes care of the rest of this equation. Very, very important. Okay. Very, very important. Make it easy for people to find you. If there's one thing that I want you to take away from tonight is make it easy for people to find you. So when people search for Side Hustle Podcast, Side Hustle, Black Women Side Hustle Podcast, Black Women Entrepreneur, they're going to see Side Hustle Pro. When people search for pregnancy loss podcasts or, infant loss, infant mortality, fertility podcasts for Black women, they are going to come across Erica's podcast. So it starts with your podcast name, it starts with your podcast description, and it starts with your episode titles. You get me? All right. I see that you guys are following along. Yes, some dynamic title changes. All of this is just really, really important. All right. So let's recap this tip real quick. So here's what you should do to go from hobby to hustle with your podcast instead of doing all those things that I told you not to do. So instead of focusing on being broad and trying not to be in a box and all these other things, number one, define your audience. Get clear on who your show is for. So for Erica, her show is for women, Black women who have suffered from pregnancy or infertility, pregnancy loss or infertility. For Lori, it was for up-and-coming authors who are not BIPOC, up-and-coming authors who are trying to navigate the publishing space. That's what I mean. So for me, it's side hustlers who are trying to figure out, Black women side hustlers who are trying to figure out how to scale their business to make it their full-time income. So all of those are 3 different examples of what I mean by getting clear on your audience. Define your niche, get clear on what your show is about and your show's angle. So my niche within Side Hustle Pro is particularly side hustles that are passion projects and businesses that you're building on the side while you're working full-time. Some people's side hustle podcasts are just like gig economy type work that you can do for extra income. So I made it clear what my show is about and the angle it's about. So anybody who's listening, as soon as you hear that intro, you know whether you need to click out or keep listening. So that's what it means to define your niche. Be very specific about what within the land of dating or adulting or side hustling or motherhood are you going to focus on? And then make it easy for people to find you. Use clear and targeted language for your show title, description, and episode titles. If you tell me a broad title inside of Podcast Moguls, I'm going to tell you to go back to the drawing board, okay? I'm going to make sure that half of the work is done for you with your show title, description, episode titles, and podcast logo imagery. So now let's get into tip number 2. And guys, remember to drop any questions into Q&A. I'm seeing the questions come in and I can't wait to dive into Q&A later. All right, so tip 2, an easy way to get listeners so that they stay connected and your show grows faster. All right, let me preface this by saying social media is very important when it comes to growing your podcast. You can't skip this step. I'm so sorry, but if you build it, they will not come. So you're going to have to, at some point, choose your platform of choice. Inside of Podcast Moguls, we start out with Instagram. Why? You'll see in the next slide. All right. So most people think that you need a lot of followers on Instagram to promote anything, or they think that you need your feed to be this perfectly color coordinated with filtered photos and the perfect sequence type of thing. And, that's really not the case. But here's what happens when you think that. Number one, you don't even try to create content, right? You get just stuck in your head trying to be perfect, and you miss out on opportunities to share with your audience or make money. If you're not posting, you can't grow your audience. And then your audience and your opportunities remain stagnant. So here's what you should do instead to go from hobby to hustle, all right? Focus on getting in front of the right followers for your podcast. Focus on getting in front of the right followers. What do I mean by the right followers? I mean, your people, your tribe, the people who will be interested in your podcast topic. If you're interested in it and you do your audience research that I teach inside of the course, you are going to find that tribe and you're going to validate if there is even a tribe for this, because hey, sometimes we might just really have something that is a short-lived series and isn't meant to be a long-term podcast, but you're going to validate this concept. And these are the people that will click the link in your bio and grow your podcast downloads, join your email list, and cause your whole ecosystem around your podcast to grow. So to demonstrate this, I'm going to give you a quick Podcast Moguls case study about how to build your podcast audience by targeting the right followers on Instagram. So I want you to meet Podcast Moguls alum, Shanitria of the Blunt Blowing Mama podcast. First of all, top 5 best podcast names ever. All right, you can probably guess what her show is about. So Shanitria used the Side Hustle Pro OMG formula to explode her audience. All right, so this is Shanitria today. She's at 73,000 followers, almost 74,000 followers. And her podcast is all about, teaching moms how to embrace cannabis to make their lives, their mental, their postpartum experience much better, and dispelling myths around the use of cannabis. So with OMG, the O, the M, and the G all stand for a step. So step 1 is, if you're starting a podcast like Shanitria did about moms interested in knowing more about cannabis, what are you going to do? You need to obsessively audit. So you need to obsessively audit, AKA research. What kind of content is going on around, cannabis and motherhood? So you click on hashtags, things like Canna Moms, and you see what kind of content is doing the best, what's rising to the top, what are people interested in, what kind of questions are being asked on these posts. You're going to get really, really granular about this, okay? Step 2 is you also then have to make friends. So you're going to go and find other people who are leading the way in this space, so who are successful on Instagram and have a big audience around this, and you're going to introduce yourself to their followers and bring them back over to your page, AKA follow. This is not follow for follow, because I want you to introduce yourself to real people whose pages you can see, like who have open pages, or if they don't have open pages, based on their comments on the post, you can tell that, hey, they would probably be interested in my comments. So you introduce yourself with a follow, and they're going to come back to your page and say, hey, wow, this is really interesting. So that's making friends. And then you're going to go over the data. So you're going to look at who's following you, what are they engaging with, when are they most active on Instagram, what age group, what gender, what locations, all of that. When you start your podcast Instagram, make sure it's a business or a creator profile so that you'll be able to see your Instagram insights. So O is for obsessively audit. Let me go back. Again, obsessively audit. Again, research the thought leaders in the space, research the hashtags around the topic that you are creating, and see what kind of content is rising to the top, as well as what interests people have, what things that people want to know that you can make content around or episode topics around. Step 2, make friends, introduce yourself to the followers of other big, medium-sized, and small accounts related to your podcast topic. And then step 3 is G, go over the data. So each week you're going to look at which posts have done the best, and then you're going to use that data to inform what you do the following week. So if your reels are doing really well, let's spend some more time making reels rather than infographics, or rather than, just static image posts. Let's do what's working. So here's what happened as a result for Shanitria of Blunt Blowing Mama podcast. She says it herself. So she wrote this a few months ago when I was getting ready to do a masterclass, and she put this in her story. She said, Side Hustle Pro is an amazing podcast coach. As someone who is one of her Podcast Mogul students, I can truly say she helped me get Blunt Blowing Mama podcast off the ground. Bro BBM's IG page. I only had 3,000 followers when I started her program, and through her techniques, I've grown organically to over 21,000 engaged followers. Because of Podcast Moguls, I was able to find my tribe, and she even gave me helpful advice when I started BBM clothing line too. She really knows her stuff, and if you want to really build a successful podcast, then her Podcast Mogul program is worth the investment. So she shares where she started. When she started the program, 3,000 followers. She shares that she was able to grow organically using the OMG formula. And you won't even believe that how much she's grown since then and how she did it. So again, Shanitria went from 3,000 to 21,000 Instagram followers using the lessons I teach in Podcast Moguls. That is a 7x jump. In case you're not doing the math or keeping track, let me know if you would like that for your show, okay? Give me a yes in the chat if you would like that for your show. So Since then, her page within the last few months has exploded even more to 73,000 Instagram followers because she did the G. She saw what was working on her page, which were reels, but not just any kind of reels. She realized that she could just do basic things. She went on vacation by herself, bought a tripod, filmed herself eating, filmed herself just frolicking on the beach, put music over that, and put up some content. You can go to Blunt Blowing Mama to see what I mean. And those reels that she started doing every day caused her page to double, then triple to 73,000 Instagram followers in less than 3 months. So when you really do that auditing, when you really do that going over of the data and hone in on what's going to work for your audience, the results will show it. And you're probably wondering, well, why is getting in front of the right followers so important? Why is growing on Instagram so important? Well, because as your followers grow, as a podcast page, as a podcaster, as your followers grow, so do your downloads, so does your audience. So if you're able to grow your followers, there are more people that are going to make their way to the link in your bio. If you have a lead magnet, which you should, which is a freebie in your bio or a way for people to contact you, you're then getting people on your email list, and that is how your audience grows. So because of the Blunt Blowing Mama platform, Shanitria has completely expanded her brand and income generating opportunities beyond podcasting. So she took a podcasting break because she had started a new job, and her podcast downloads have still grown and increased month over month because of the work she does on social. It's sending people back to specific episodes to learn more after she drops something in a reel. She has her BBM clothing line, as you see here. This is the BBM shop online that you can also go to and explore on Instagram. As your downloads grow, so do your money-making opportunities, you guys. So not only does Shanitria have this clothing line, but she also has one-on-one consulting. So people pay her to get more information and to, help them navigate this space. So check-in time. Let me know if this is helpful for you. I see the chat blowing up. Give me a yes in the chat if it is. Kat, my voice coach says, take a pause, boo. Yes, I know I should be drinking water, but pregnant me wants this instead. But yes, that's why I did build in a pause, Kat. It didn't come soon enough though, but yes, I'm glad. Kayla, I'm happy about the wellness break. Yes, thank you. All right, so I just also get really excited about this, you guys. Like, I'm just like, boom, boom, boom. And then she did this, and then she did that. So now let's recap this really quickly. To start building a bigger audience, which will help you go from hobby to hustle, you need to target the right followers. So you need to do the OMG formula. And you can, again, do this across different platforms. This also works on Twitter. You can do a modified version on TikTok and modified versions across other platforms as well. So the OMG is for obsessively auditing, making new friends, and going over the data. All right, so now let's get into tip number 3. Oops, I jumped ahead. So tip number 3 is how to make money podcasting. So we're going to go back for a second. So these are my favorite strategies to make money from your podcast, and you can start using these right away. Before you even do that, though, you have to get to know your listeners. So if you don't know who listens to your show, you can't really create a product for them. You can't even pitch advertisers because they want to know who they're talking to. They're going to require some stats from you. And so your first order of business as a podcaster is to understand who listens to your show. So you can do that in a number of ways. You can do focus groups with your listeners. You can ask them to complete a survey for you in exchange for gift cards. You can start a Facebook group and, again, poll people that way. Before you even start your show, you can do some polls to understand who would potentially listening. So listen to your listeners, and you want to find out, what are their challenges? What are their needs? What products do they talk about? What conferences do they attend? What services do they use? What questions do they have? You really want to start to get inside of people's head to understand what led them to listen to my show, what led them to seek out my content. And here's some other pre-work that you have to do before you even start making money from your show. So you need to use lead magnets, AKA freebies, to grow your email list. So when you first start out, it's easy to put out a little email to friends and things like that. And actually, that's how I started the Side Hustle Pro email list. I let people know what I was starting, let them opt into my email list through a link. But after that, after the homies join, and sometimes they just do it to support, then leave later, you are really going to need people who listen to your show to come on down and opt into your email list. So you do that by creating freebies that support their journey. So I have a show about side hustlers. I have an ultimate guide to getting your first side hustle up and running in 30 days. That's a freebie you'll get as soon as you go over to my site. And this is one that you can grab on all of my social media links that are in my bio and so forth. So that's the first way to start growing your email list. And the reason you want to grow your email list is because no matter which of these options you choose to make money podcasting, you are going to need to communicate your offer to that email list. And your email list is going to be the place that is most active and most supported. So you can put up posts on social media, but it's much harder to get people to take action. But when you email them, when you land in their inbox and you remind them over and over again in your inbox, they are more likely to take action. So now let's go through some of the options for how to make money. Option one is to create a paid ebook or a course and promote it on your show, and then remind your email list about it through dedicated emails. So here you'll see a picture of Podcast Moguls. This is from my website. I share on my website, hey, this is my Podcast Moguls program. This is Master the Gram. I also share that through my social media content. I share that on my link tree, which is the link in my bio, and so forth. So once you have a grasp of what your audience needs, you can create something. And I recommend testing out something small first. So I didn't just jump to creating a course. I started out with a challenge. I started out with smaller mini courses to really test if I was on the right path, if there was an audience for this, if people would pay for this, and then I grew from there. Option two, you can do like Shanitria has done and develop products that your listeners love and need. Listen, podcast merch is not an easy zone, okay? You really have to create something that just has a beloved saying that people, that really resonates with people. It can't just be your podcast logo. So for her, she has this shirt, "Moms who smoke weed are not bad moms." And then in this caption, you see, I kept the caption in so you can see like this is one of those times where she just tested out by having a small amount on, in inventory, and people blew out her orders. They sold her out. And she also, as a mom, as a beginner podcaster, was really doing a lot on her own. So she's like, hey, fulfillment's going to be a little slow. So be prepared when you create something that your audience really loves and need for it to sell out and for you to need some support to fulfill those orders. But this is what you should be looking for, not just selling merch with your logo on it. And hey, I've made that mistake myself, so I can speak from experience. Option three, you can do like Tolu, another Podcast Mogul alum of the UI Narrative podcast, has done, which is to pitch brands that your listeners will love and need. So Tolu started out in your position. She came to a masterclass. She ended up joining Podcast Moguls. And in this case, she was pitching a lot of brands once she decided on the show that she wanted to launch. And it's about user interface design and people who work in that space, because there's very limited conversations and you don't really hear from people who look like her inside of the UI space. So she was pitching brands. And wouldn't you know it, Google actually came knocking at her door from just seeing her content across LinkedIn, across different groups for UI designers. And because they wanted to grow the inclusivity in that space, they wanted to get in front of this audience, even though she was a new podcaster with less downloads. So don't be discouraged if you have less downloads. It's really not always about the number. It's more so about who are you talking to and which brand wants to talk to that person as well. Option 3, I'm laughing at myself with this, but this is a screenshot from a partnership I did with the team at Comcast Rise. So I continue to pitch brands that my listeners will love and need. This particular partnership was a partnership that rewarded side hustlers who were growing their businesses, small businesses. And so because I know who my audience is and I know what they need, which are resources, all types of resources, everything from web design to invoicing software to actual money and grants to get equipment and things like that, which is what Comcast Rise was providing. I know when a brand will be a good fit for the show. And so I'm going to pitch that brand and I'm going to work with that brand. And the brand will in turn feel that return on investment because they're talking to the right audience and the audience is going over. They see that traffic to the website. The audience is applying, the audience is buying the product and so forth. So with this partnership, we had like almost a 2-year partnership because they kept coming back to re-up because they were seeing that ROI. And that's what you really want when you enter the space of pitching brands for your sponsors, pitching brands for your show. You want them to be happy. You don't just want to say, oh man, I hope they give me the money and I hope I can get away with this, because then they won't come back. And then you have to keep on pitching new sponsors and new sponsors. What you want is brands that want to keep coming back every year. So fewer brands of quality who want to keep re-upping and supporting your show. Option 4 for making money from your podcast is use your podcast as a lead magnet to attract future clients or customers. So in the beginning, I talked about creating a physical lead magnet, freebie, PDF is what I was describing, where you help people. And in exchange for getting that PDF, they give you their email. But you can also think about your podcast as a lead magnet. So this is what Lori Tharps, another Podcast Moguls alum, has done. She says in her own words, I launched a podcast using my Moguls training that is pretty much a sales funnel to attract creative writing students and coaching clients. She says, I'm seriously following the Nicaila Matthews Okome methodology, and I'm continuing to see results and growth in my business. And by the way, she moved to Spain to completely re-up her life, quit her job as a professor, and this is what she's doing full time. And she's hosting a writing retreat in the south of Spain as well. Her podcast allows her to pay for this lifestyle. So in addition to having coaching clients, now she's having a retreat that people are paying her for as well. So this is one way to think about your podcast. There are attorneys who use their podcast as lead magnets for clients. There are, coaches for different kind of businesses who use their podcast as lead magnets. There are people who have courses who use their podcast as lead magnets. So your podcast itself doesn't even have to directly pay you if it is part of your sales funnel, which is leading people into the world of becoming a customer. You get me? All right. So let's get into the fifth and final one of my favorite ways to make money from podcasting. And again, you guys, these are not the only ways to make money podcasting, but these are some of my favorites because there's a lower barrier to entry. Anyone can start at no matter what stage of podcasting you are in. So this is just some more screenshots of what Lori does on her page for Read, Write, and Create. You'll see that how she calls out the different things she's doing, the colors she uses to really attract and make it vibrant. And then you'll see here a post for reminder of 2 weeks left to register for the retreat. So go over to Read, Write, and Create or Lori Tharp's IG so you can see more of how she's using her podcast as a lead magnet to attract future clients or customers. So option 5, one of the other things you can do is create a paid subscription for your podcast. Now, Side Hustle Pro, I've considered this lane. I have not decided to go down this route, but it is one that can be really lucrative, but you really have to commit to making it worthwhile for your subscribers. So what podcasters do when they do this option is they put certain content behind a paywall. So once you join at a certain tier, and you get to determine the price points for those tiers, it could be $5.99, it could be $7.99, and then a more premium one could be $14.99 or $19.99. And then you have to let people know, hey, here's what you'll get at this level, exclusive content, ad-free audio, blah, 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 and so forth. Make it worth people's while. So sometimes people create subscriptions and then they kind of have it as an afterthought and you're going to keep subscribers that way. So subscriptions can be a very lucrative path, but you have to make it worth people's while and you can't take it for granted that people will remain subscribers. All right. So now let's quickly just go over how to make money podcasting. First of all, you got to launch your show. You have to grow your audience because the audience is key. You have to use methods like OMG and the additional marketing methods I teach inside of Podcast Moguls to continue to grow this audience, learn from them, build your email list out, and then decide on your revenue path. Really important, try one at a time, you guys. Don't try to do it all at once. Really just focus in on one thing at a time. I have tested out many of these. I started out with merch. I focused on merchandise. Then I went into creating mini courses and longer courses. So I focused on one thing at a time. So if you are creating a service or a course, start small and test to make sure that it's something your listeners really need. If you're creating a product, start with 1 to 2 products at a time. Don't fill up your website with all this inventory and confuse people. Really start with the signature product. You saw with Shanitria, that t-shirt that I showed you, that is her signature t-shirt that came out, and she would have different pictures with just that t-shirt for a long time because you want to really focus and not get carried away by all the things you can make with slogans on it. If you're creating a paid subscription, research the market to decide what to include and what fellow podcasters charge for subscription tiers, because you can't come in at $30 a month when that's just not what the market will hold, okay? And if you're pitching sponsors, you will have to develop a media kit and start cold pitching the sponsors, which I provide examples of, and I provide a whole pricing calculator inside of Podcast Mogul so you know what you can charge at different levels of downloads. So now let's do an overall rewind before we jump into Podcast Moguls Q&A. Not Podcast Moguls Q&A, but webinar Q&A, and I give you a little background on Podcast Moguls. So I see your questions coming in. Stacey, you can't seem to get listeners to talk back. All right, we're going to talk about all of that, you guys. So quick rewind first. So we went over in tip number 1, the 3 things you should stop doing with your podcast to go from hobby to hustle and what to do instead. We went over tip number 2, an easy way to get listeners so that they stay connected and your show grows faster. And we also went over tip number 3, which is my favorite strategies to start making money from your show at any download level that you can start using right away. So now I know that some of you guys might be feeling different ways, right? You might be feeling overwhelmed. You might be feeling stuck, like your podcast is not growing fast enough or getting enough downloads. You probably know that it's because you're winging it, right? And there's no proven blueprint that you're following. Or you might just be feeling determined, like I'm here. I love what Nikayla is saying. I believe if I just follow these steps and, I do everything I'm supposed to do. I know the value of having a powerful platform like a regular podcast. So I am going to do it. I'm ready to do what it takes to grow it. Well, no matter which boat you're in tonight, I want you guys to know that you have options. Again, I'm not going to drill nothing down your throat tonight, but I am going to share with you how I continue to coach people with podcasting. So option 1, keep trying to DIY your podcast with tips gathered all over social media and YouTube. Hey, YouTube free, social media free, all of that. I get it. But option 2, if you decide to, you can decide to make podcasting a priority and get my mentorship to know exactly where to start and what steps to take. So all of you guys, before we leave here tonight, do know that you are invited to join me inside of Podcast Moguls, which is my mentoring program that teaches my proven and effective marketing strategies to podcasters who want to have a hit podcast, grow a bigger following, and make money from their podcast. And I've introduced you to some of my podcast moguls to share just a little taste of what can happen, the transformation that can happen through this mentorship program and through my coaching. But I'll also just give you a quick breakdown of who it's for, because it's not for everybody, and that's okay. So it's for you if you want to get access to mentorship, get my podcast business advice. I have people who, just the other day, Shanisha came to our live coaching call. And so people aren't dipping in each and every time, but when they really need to come back, re-up on some podcast business advice, they will come on down. So this is something that you have the option to do throughout your podcast journey. And it's for you if you also want to just learn simple and effective ways to promote your podcast and grow your audience. It's for you if you want to learn how to pitch sponsors at any podcast size, and also learn monetization in general, because as I do new things, I teach my podcast moguls first. Right now, I'm navigating the world of dynamic advertising, and I want you guys to know how to do that as well. So you might not even know what that means exactly. We'll, as soon as I have more information for you, I'll add it to Podcast Moguls, and you always have access to everything inside the program. No matter how many times I update it, everybody who's in the program will always have access to newer content. So it's for you if you really want to learn how to make money from your podcast at any podcast size. All right, so now let's get into what the course entails. And then again, we are getting to Q&A very soon. So this is actually the fastest I've ever gone. Maybe I was going too fast, but I see, remember to put your questions in Q&A. Teresina, I think you just dropped the question. Please move it over to the Q&A, because I'm just going to go over to that tab once it's time to do the questions, all right? And I'll get to the cost right now. So first of all, the course has 3 parts to it. So it has the course itself. So if you log in tonight after joining, you'll see immediately on demand video lessons, tutorials, templates, swipe files, guides. This is the curriculum right here. So module 0 is the fundamentals, where I'm going over everything from equipment to publishing. Module 1 is about refining your topic and finding your perfect listener. Module 2 is about positioning your podcast. Module 3 is about launching your podcast or relaunching. Module 4 is about marketing, growing your Instagram reach. Module 5 is about growing that email list. Module 6 is about Facebook and Instagram advertising 101. And module 7 is about monetization. So first, we talk about positioning your podcast in module 7. And then module 8, we talk about creating your winning pitch. So that's part 1, the course itself. On-demand course, you can do it at your pace. Part 2 is the community. So of course you join a Facebook community with private community where you're with fellow moguls. You're able to ask questions, get feedback. I'm in the group. I'm answering questions in the group. We are sharing our wins. We're sharing our challenges. So this is an example. This is from Felicia of the Trill MBA podcast. If you can see, she's number 53 here with the raised purple fist. And she shared when she made number 53 in iTunes careers. You know, getting onto these charts is no easy feat. Again, hundreds of thousands of podcasts, only 200 in the top charts. So for you to hit anything within that 200, it's an amazing thing that you need to celebrate yourself for. So this is what Felicia did here inside of our private community. And then part 3 of the program is the coaching. So we meet monthly for video group coaching calls. You receive personal guidance from me. We do deep dives on topics. With the course, you are automatically given 4 live coaching calls, but A fun fact, a not so secret fact, is you can come back at any time. If we're having a live coaching call, you can come back at any time. That's just why, people, OGs who've joined in 2018 and people like Shanitria, they'll pop in and say, hey, I want to really refocus on my podcast right now. So I'm going to pop in tonight and see what's going on. And that's perfectly okay. So this was actually a deep dive. I also do deep dive when people have a lot of questions about a certain topic. I'll bring in someone to add even more information. So here we had a coaching call with my editor, Chris, who was able to answer even more detailed questions about editing. And this is actually saved now as a lesson. So if you join tonight, you'll get to go through this. So some of the questions you might have about editing, he may have answered in this section. And this is just what a few more podcast moguls had to say about the actual program. So this is Shirley from the She's Got Drive podcast. Some of you might know Shirley. She wrote when she first joined, she had only started implementing my marketing strategies about 3 months after she joined. And this is what happened. She had, at that point, 25,000 downloads. And then in the next 3 months, she went to 46,000 downloads. She says her strategy absolutely works. So that's almost doubling your downloads from coming in and doing the work. You got to do the work though. I'm not promising miracles or, you just come in, you read the lessons and boom, this happens. Like you have to actually implement what I teach. This is also Fritz Charles of the Coin Gamma podcast. So, we welcome the fellas as well. So Fritz, he started his podcast because he genuinely was just interested in talking about Bitcoins, cryptocurrency. He was just really digging that space. And then through starting this platform, which is a really interesting side effect and bonus of podcasting, you are automatically put in on this pedestal of being a thought leader in the space once you start putting out your opinions. I know some of you hate that about podcasting, but it can be good as well. So Fritz, he was flown out internationally to speak at conferences, to talk about this topic, all because he put himself out there, created this podcast, and was the host. He was able to speak at over 5 conferences just last year. Actually, this was the year before that he wrote this. So this is the power of being in the program and taking your podcast seriously. All right. So someone asked about the pricing. Let's get into that. Within Podcast Moguls, like I said, you are getting monthly live coaching sessions. Everyone is given 4 sessions technically, right? And each session, if you were to do a one-on-one with me, is $1,000. So that's priced at $4,000 if you were to just do 4 sessions with Nikayla. Instead, you're getting really anytime you want to come sessions because I don't believe in like capping you guys. Some people cap their courses after a year, you lose access. I don't believe in that. So you're getting monthly live coaching sessions. You're getting annual community access. So, some programs, they cap their membership for the private communities at $197 a month. And that's not annual. So you literally pay that for as many years as you want to be a part of the program. But within Podcast Moguls, you're getting the coaching sessions, you're getting the annual community access, you're getting access to all of my personal sponsorship pitch letters, my media kits that I send out that landed me those sponsorships. And if you'll remember, I spent $1,197 just to learn about sponsorships, but it's included inside of Podcast Moguls at no additional fee. Plus, you're also getting my guest pitch templates. So pitching and landing guests is a very hard thing. And some people, because they know that, they'll charge upwards of $597 for just templates to pitch people. But again, I'm including that inside of Podcast Moguls for no additional fee. Plus, when you invest, you also get Master the Gram, which is my dedicated Instagram course about building an engaged audience on Instagram. Anytime this course is updated, you continue to have access to this because I know Instagram changes a lot and there's some updates that I'll be adding and you will always have access to the most updated version of this. So that's a bonus that I throw in with Podcast Moguls. So you're getting monthly live coaching sessions, annual community access, all of my sponsorship pitch letters and media kits, my guest pitch templates, plus Master the Gram, plus the Goal Getter Action Plan. This again, is a separate course. I sell this separately. This is a productivity blueprint to help you manage your side hustle with your full-time job. If you just want to buy this for $98, it's available. But if you join Podcast Moguls, you get Master the Gram and you get Goal Getter Action Plan included. So you get all my signature courses included. So again, this is what you're getting. It's a total value of $8,553. I put that here just to give you guys the sense of just how much I'm including, because I don't have to do that. And I do that because, again, I don't think it's fair to make you pay extra or not understand how to do sponsorships when you join a podcast course. Like, I think all of this should be included, but I also have to value it, right? Because it is very valuable. This is something that people would charge XYZ for by itself. So total value of everything provided in Podcast Moguls, $8,553. Obviously, I'm not going to charge you that. So the promotional price, if you join today, you get over 65% off the course and all of those things that I just showed you, the Master the Gram, Goal Getter Action Plan, all of this for everyone who joins tonight. And everyone who joins, whether you pay in full or payment plan, it's all included. So it's $997. Regular price is $3,000. You save $2,000 when you join after you come to the masterclass. And the doors are actually open now. So Joanna is going to go ahead and drop that link in. Let me see, I might have the link as well. Okay. So if you go over to sidehustlepro.co, oh, look at that. Look at us both doing it at the same time. You can join the program right now. It's open. And fun fact, again, you guys, this is the last masterclass that I am doing for the year. So I don't know when I will open the doors again, and I definitely don't know when it will be this cost again. So if you've ever been interested in joining Podcast Moguls, if you've ever been interested in learning from me, I have been teaching and coaching podcasters since 2018. All right. This is your chance. I don't know when I will open the doors again. I honestly do not know. But I know that I love teaching this, and I know that I wanted to give one last opportunity before I take a pause from masterclasses. So please, if you have ever thought about joining the program, do not miss this opportunity. So you have two options. You have option one, paying in full for $997, or option two, 4 monthly payments of $297. So that's the payment plan option for those who have just asked. 4 monthly payments of $297. It will be charged every 30 days after your first payment automatically. Like I said, the doors are now open from Podcast Moguls. We can talk a little bit more about what's included inside of Q&A. And listen, I'm not here to pressure anybody, okay? Let's be clear. Nikayla does not do that. I do not believe in that. I will share one more thing about price though before I go into Q&A, and that is the equation I use when I'm determining if I'm going to make an investment for my business, because at some point you do need to make an investment for your business, for your life, for the next thing that you want to do in your life. But you also have to do the follow through. It's only going to be worthwhile if you do the follow through. And this is the question I ask myself anytime I am getting ready to make an investment. I do the, would it be worth it to you if, Nikayla? Like, would it be worth it to you if? So would it be worth it to you if Podcast Moguls helped you quit your job? You know, would being able to live life on your own terms be worth it to you? Yes. Then come on. Now, I'm promising that you're going to be able to quit your job tomorrow, but I'm telling you that you could be starting a pathway that is helping you redefine your life and redefine the path you thought you saw your life going on. So for Lori of Read, Write, and Create, she had a full-time job as a tenured professor at Temple. Okay. If you guys know about academia and you know about tenure, it is very hard to get, especially for a Black woman. When she left, she quit that job and moved to Spain in 2021. She took the lessons that she learned not only from Podcast Moguls, but the Side Hustle Pro podcast. She paid off her debt. She moved. And then she said, you know what? I'm going to start a new podcast, and it's going to be a sales funnel that's going to help me pay for this life in Spain, which, by the way, her life in Spain is way less expensive than it was in the US. So, and she was just on the podcast. If you want to go listen and hear more from her, she was just on Side Hustle Pro, so you can hear a little bit more about her experience. She was hold on one second, episode 359. Go and hear Lori's story to hear even more about this. But if you do that, would it be worth it to you equation? Ask yourself, what are you trying to get from building a personal brand, from starting a podcast? And would it be worth it to you if Podcast Moguls can help you do that? And you can even ask in Q&A and say, hey, Nikayla, this is what I'm trying to do. Do you think this program could help me get there? Let's talk about it. You can also ask yourself, would it be worth it to you if Podcast Moguls helps you land major sponsors? So sponsors and advertising, that is my jam. I love seeing us podcasters, indie podcasters especially, I love seeing us get paid. We're going to talk bluntly and honestly inside of our live coaching calls about what you can charge, how you can make money. So if your takeaway is, I want to make back what I spent on this program, then let's do it. And would getting approached with sponsorship opportunities be worth it to you? If yes, then come on over to sidehustlepro.co/podcast moguls. You saw this happen with Tolu of the UI Narrative podcast. She was pitching, but then also the biggest brand, one of the biggest brands in the world, also came right to her door, knocked on her door, said, hey, we want to give you money for your podcast. Your independent podcast that does not even have as many downloads as some of the bigger podcasts, but you have the audience we want to talk to. That's what's possible when you learn. And when they approached her, she was able to email me. So I'm very available to my students as well. It's not just like, if something happens in between a coaching call, which is what happened in her case, she said, hey, I'm about to get on this call with Google. I'm not sure, what should I know before I get on? What should I ask? What, how should it go? And I was able to coach her through that process. And it ended up in her securing the deal. So I'm available to you in that way. Again, this is what happened to Tolu of the UI Narrative podcast. So the only way to learn is really through action, you guys. I can't say that enough. I can't, emphasize that enough. So I do want to reward you for taking action with a few pay in full bonuses. So the other things that I said were included in the program, that's for everyone, no matter if you pay in full or you do payment plan. But these next few things are for my pay in full folks. So pay in full tonight, and you are going to get my pitch email that landed me my first $4,000 in sponsorship. So the exact email I sent to a stranger on the internet that started the whole interaction. You'll also get what I call my 5-day branding blitz, which I sell by itself for $297, but these are the exact steps I took coming out the gate to launch my show and land in the top charts. If you really want to do a big launch, you need to know these steps. You'll also receive my pitch email to Apple that landed me in New and Noteworthy if you pay in full. And you'll also receive my pitch email that landed me my first international speaking engagement in Barbados. So podcasting affords you many opportunities, but you can never stop putting yourself out there. And pitching, cold pitches, is one of the things I'm also very passionate about. That is my jam. I was like, you know what? That conference sounds great, and a vacation sounds great also. So I pitched and I got flown out and had a little nice vacation while I spoke at this conference that I really love. I love the organizers, and was able to share my knowledge with this audience. So that's just a little bit of what you get inside of Podcast Moguls. And here's a little bit about the power of Podcast Moguls. So this is what Dr. Alicia Franklin had to say. Her podcast, The Research Her Podcast, is the podcast that she joined Podcast Moguls to grow. When she joined, she shared her growth chart inside of our private community. She said that when she joined, she went from hundreds of downloads to thousands. And you can see that in her growth chart by implementing the knowledge that's taught in the program, by having more clear vision and understanding of how this landscape works. That's what I want for all of you. that is really what I want for all of you. No more doing this blind. You don't have to do this blind. Like there's someone ahead of you who has done all of this before you. So you don't have to go through this blind and figure this out with your friends and any of that. Like just come in and literally learn. Similarly, the power of Podcast Moguls helped Nia Clark of the Black Wall Street 1921 podcast. She changed the name, which is why the logo has a different title, but she passed 100,000 downloads in just 4 months. She's another person who came in with a completely different podcast. At this point, I don't even remember what her original podcast is that she came in with, but she came in and with more clarity about refining her podcast topic, who she really wanted to talk to, who the audience was. She started one that was near and dear to her heart. And the popularity of her podcast prompted BBC News to reach out to her, interview her, and produce a 4-minute short video with her narrating the story of the Tulsa Race Massacre. How amazing is that? Again, podcasting opens you up to so many opportunities. It's more than just making money. For me, Podcast Moguls has actually also helped me with public speaking. I became so used to just talking that even though there's the nervous jitters when you're in front of a stage and all of that, you're just so much more comfortable with telling a story, with speaking. So there are so many unexpected benefits that come with podcasting. So again, join Podcast Moguls today. Let's jump into Q&A. Here are your options. $9.97, pay in full. You get those pay in full bonuses, or you can do 4 monthly payments of $297. And this promotional price will go away, you guys. So Friday, August 4th, a week from today at 12 p.m., this is when the promotional price will go away. And remember that when you pay in full, you receive the pay in full bonuses. So head over to sidehustlepro.co/podcastmoguls and join today. Refresher of what you're getting. Thank you so much for staying until the end. Stick around for Q&A. Use code HustlePro to get the rest of this month and all of next month free on Libsyn.com. All right. So now let's jump into the Q&A. All right. So one thing I want to do, let's see. Okay. So for everyone who's watching the replay, I'm going to stop the recording right now because Q&A is for those who come live. So thank you for watching the replay. And if you have questions, email me.